I usually don't do the Deal or No Deal series during the playoffs. I wait till the offseason to pick this series back up, but with all of the trade speculation going on recently involving players on the Winnipeg Jets like Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Connor Hellebuyck, all three of which who are in the top 10 of Frank Saravalli's newest trade targets board, so I thought now would be the perfect time to do a Winnipeg Jets themed episode of NHL Deal or No Deal. As always, before we get started, I do want to give a huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a mock trade and leave it on the post. We got well over 200 for this episode. Obviously, I can't feature them all, but just know I read every single one and I appreciate all of you guys. So with that all out of the way, let's kick this episode off with the first mock trade from Backstrimmer, who says Mark, I'm guessing you mean Scheifele, for Kuznetsov and a second round draft pick. Also, really appreciate the support. For this mock trade, I think right from the hop, I'm going to say no deal from the Jets side of things. I just don't really think this would make a whole lot of sense for them. Both Mark Scheifele and Evgeny Kuznetsov are heading into the final years of their contract. In my opinion, at this point in their careers, Mark Scheifele is the better player. Kuznetsov is older than Mark Scheifele. He also has a higher cap hit than Mark Scheifele. Sure, the Jets would also be getting the second round draft pick in this deal, but I still don't think that makes it worth it for them. If the Jets made this trade, their situation, aside from adding an extra second round draft pick, wouldn't really change all that much. Your top paid center would still be heading into the final year of his contract. I think if the Jets are going to trade Mark Scheifele, they're probably going to be looking for at least one premium younger asset in return. The next mock trade we have comes from Haggles Bagels, who says LA gets Scheifele, Winnipeg gets Alex Turcotte, Trevor Moore, and a second round draft pick. LA is only a few pieces away from being a true threat in the West, with Kopitar aging and the likelihood of Turcotte becoming a potential bust. Slotting Turcotte immediately into the Jets' middle six would boost his play and confidence. It gives a chance at a Perfetti-Turcotte center combination, and Scheifele will accelerate the production of young LA players, but I could only see this move happening if Dubois were traded as well. So this one is definitely more along the lines of what I think a Scheifele trade could look like. That being said, I'm not sure if this is a deal the Jets would pull the trigger on. Based on his development up until this point, after being selected 5th overall back in 2019, I'm just not sure how enticing of an asset Alex Turcotte is if you're giving up a player like Mark Scheifele. Alex Turcotte is already 22 years old, has yet to make the Los Angeles Kings roster full-time. He's appeared in just 12 games across 2 seasons. He's done well in the American Hockey League, but certainly hasn't dominated down there to the level you would hope for somebody who was selected 5th overall, back in 2019. I do really like Trevor Moore. I think he's a fantastic middle six winger, extremely versatile, but I'm just not sure if the value is there for somebody like Mark Scheifele. If you're the Jets, I definitely think you should be looking for a young player or prospect who's like a surefire lock to be, either a top 6 center or a top 6 winger, or if you're not getting that, a ton of draft capital. And I just really don't think at this point you can say for sure that Alex Turcotte is, a lock to be even a top 9 NHL center at this point. Moving along now, this next mock trade comes from Techno Frost, who says to Montreal, Pierre-Luc Dubois, to Winnipeg, Florida's 2023 first, Christian Dvorak, Jordan Harris, and a 2024 third. I feel like this is still fair considering Montreal could just wait for PLD to go to free agency, and also really appreciate the support. Obviously, we all know the situation with Pierre-Luc Dubois and his desire to play for the Montreal Canadiens. The Jets don't have a lot of leverage in this situation at all. They can't afford to be picky because the Montreal Canadiens can just hang up the phone. Pierre-Luc Dubois can accept his qualifying offer and walk to unrestricted free agency next offseason and sign with the Canadiens if he pleases. So I definitely think it's in the Jets' best interest to try and get a deal done with Montreal before next season begins, so then you don't have this whole situation hanging over the team throughout the season. I did see some mock trades sending Pierre-Luc Dubois to a team that isn't the Montreal Canadiens, but I don't really think that makes sense either, because why would another team give up premium assets for this player when he could just do the same thing to that team that acquires him that he's doing to the Jets? It really feels like one way or the other, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to end up a Canadian. As far as this mock trade goes, I like it. I'm going to go ahead and say deal to this one. Are the Winnipeg Jets getting a player or an asset in return that will ever turn out to be as good as Pierre-Luc Dubois is now? Probably not, but given the situation, I feel like the Jets would be doing pretty well here. I like Jordan Harris a lot, just that I think a really underrated rookie season, 17 points, fantastic underlying numbers. They'd be getting that Florida first rounder, which is obviously going to be a late first rounder given the fact that the Panthers are currently in the Stanley Cup Finals, but a first rounder nonetheless. Christian Dvorak is a middle six center heading into the final year of his contract. Obviously his time in Montreal didn't go as well as I'm sure Montreal would have hoped, but I think there's still a guy there that can get you 15 goals a season. And hey, depending on how the Winnipeg Jets do next season, Dvorak is a guy that I think a lot of teams would be interested in around the trade deadline at 50% retained. Maybe the Jets could get themselves another nice asset by flipping him. So this is definitely a trade that I like for both sides. And if a Dubois trade to Montreal happens before this upcoming season, I think it could definitely look something like this. This next mock trade comes from Welcome to Detroit, who says Hellebuyck to Buffalo for Peterka, a 2023 first, which I believe is 13th overall Buffalo has, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Hellebuyck comes with an extension. I feel like there was at least a dozen mock trades on the post that had, Hellebuyck going to the Buffalo Sabres. It seems like this is a pretty popular idea. The Sabres are an up-and-coming team. They were playoff contenders this season. They're expected to get even better next season. So getting somebody like Connor Hellebuyck, who, is a perennial Vezina Trophy candidate with the exception of 1 or 2 seasons, especially with an extension because Hellebuck's current contract ends after next season, that would definitely solidify Buffalo's goaltending situation. That being said, Hellebuyck is 31 years old. Devin Levi is 21 years old. Levi showed some very impressive flashes of play to close out the regular season, so I'm kind of wondering if he's ready to, take on the starting role in Buffalo, then why would they give up a big haul for somebody like Connor Hellebuyck? And even if Devin Levi is not ready now, I feel like he likely will be in 1 or 2 more seasons, so part of me feels like maybe Buffalo should just go with a cheaper option, sign a goaltender to a 1 or 2 year deal, a veteran goaltender who can kind of be like a 1A, and Devin Levi be a 1B, just so there isn't a ton of pressure on Levi right away to, play 55 plus games a season. So that's kind of where I'm at with this whole idea. I think just based off of value alone, this is a pretty good mock trade. I mean, Peterka, the 13th overall draft pick, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, that's a solid haul. I'm just not sure if it's worth it for the Sabres to give up that kind of package, again, when you have somebody like Devin Levi, who's just 21. Moving along now, this next mock trade comes from 37 Willdog, who says to Columbus, Hellebuyck, to Winnipeg, a 2024 first, Daniil Tarasov and Igor Chinnikov. Columbus's hiring of Mike Babcock shows that they want to and think they can compete. They had arguably the worst goaltending in the league last year, so this would be a massive upgrade. First off, how about that Mike Babcock news, eh? I honestly did not think we would ever see him coaching in the NHL again, but here we are. Really interesting choice by Columbus, but yeah, like you said, I think the hiring of Babcock definitely does show that they think that they can compete relatively quickly. Hellebuyck would be a massive addition to the Blue Jackets, who, like you said, had some of the worst goaltending in the entire league this past season. If competing as soon as this upcoming season is the route the Blue Jackets plan on taking, then I think this is a good mock trade. I'm going to go ahead and say deal to this one. I feel like the value is definitely there for the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, that 2024 first round draft pick from Columbus could have the potential to be massive if Columbus has another disastrous season like the one that they just had. Now, if a trade like this were to happen, I feel like Columbus would almost definitely put some kind of protection on that draft pick, but nonetheless, they'd also be getting Daniil Tarasov, who's a young goaltender, might be something there, has shown some flashes of being really good at the NHL level, and then Igor Chinnikov, who I think has all the tools to become a 20 goal scorer at the NHL level if he puts it all together. And hey, if we know one thing about Jarmo Kekalainen, it's the fact that he's not afraid to make a big move, so it'd be cool to see something like this happen. Next up, we have another Connor Hellebuyck mock trade. This one comes from Chris, who says Hellebuyck and a second round pick to Ottawa for Alex DeBrincat. Now, this is a very interesting mock trade. Alex DeBrincat, like Hellebuyck, like Dubois, and like Mark Scheifele, is a name that has been subject to a lot of trade speculation. Apparently, DeBrincat has no interest on talking about a long-term extension in Ottawa as long as this whole ownership saga is going on, and the future of the team is kind of uncertain when it comes to who's going to be the next owner. So it was reported the other day that the Ottawa Senators have started to explore the trade market for Alex DeBrincat. Ottawa is a team that don't really have, a long-term option in terms of a goaltender. After the year that Philip Gustafsson just had in Minnesota, I'm sure the Senators are looking back now and wishing they never decided to move him. But if the Senators are serious about becoming contenders in the Eastern Conference sooner rather than later, which based off of the moves they've made over the last calendar year, I think that they are, then I feel like this definitely makes some sense. And for the Jets, this is one of those trades where you're getting a young player, but it's a young player who is already very established in the NHL. He's had multiple 40-plus goal seasons, and he's a guy that helps you win and compete right now. So it's not like the Jets have to enter some full-on on rebuild if they decide to move guys like Hellebuyck, Scheifele, and Dubois. I think there is a reality where they can still be a competitive team, a playoff contender, and this is one of those kinds of trades that would definitely help them do that. I think it'd be a lot of fun to see something like this happen. Is it the most realistic mock trade in the world? Nah, maybe not, but I'm going to go ahead and say deal to this one. I think it's fun. This next mock trade comes from Mason. This will probably be the last Hellebuyck one of the video because I know we've done a bunch of Hellebuyck ones in a row here, but the mock trade is, what do you think of a Connor Hellebuyck for Marco Kasper, Ville Husso, and Detroit's 9th overall pick? And also really appreciate the support. I'm glad you like the videos. As far as this mock trade goes, call me biased, whatever you want. Hell no. For where the Red Wings are at right now, I just think it'd be crazy to give up a package like this for a 31-year-old goaltender, especially when you have somebody like Sebastian Cossa in the system. For me, I feel like Marco Kasper, probably an untouchable in the Red Wings organization right now when you think about the team needs. The Red Wings need a bona fide second-line center. I love Andrew Kopp. I don't love him in that role. The hope is that Marco Kasper is eventually going to be that guy. He's developed really nicely since being drafted. He's expected to compete for a full-time roster spot as soon as next season. And then you throw the 9th overall pick on top of Kasper and Husso, just way too much. Doesn't make sense for Detroit. No way. Just to keep things fresh, let's throw in a couple of non-Jets mock trades. This one comes from Filet, who says Canucks receive 19th overall and a 4th round draft pick. Chicago receives 11th overall and Tyler Myers. Tyler Myers has 1 year left on his deal and is a guy Chicago could slot into a role, hopefully to bump up his value a little bit and to move him at the deadline while retaining salary on him. On top of that, they move up to 11th like they want. Vancouver clears cap space and moves down 8 spots to help them add to the defense or sign PD long term. Also, really appreciate the kind words, and this is a really well thought out mock trade. You might think moving down 8 spots in the draft is a lot for a cap dump, but salary cap is a premium in the NHL, and the Vancouver Canucks don't have any of it. They are already over the salary cap for next season, just based off of the players they have signed in the current roster, which is insane considering they weren't a playoff team. So getting Tyler Myers' $6 million cap hit off the books would be huge for that team. It would allow them to actually be able to do some things this offseason. And for Chicago, I mean, no brainer of a trade. Obviously, this is the kind of trade we see happen a lot with rebuilding teams. You maximize your cap space to get draft capital, get young assets. I like this mock trade a lot. Again, some of you may think that's a lot for Vancouver to give up just to clear cap space, but I'm going to go ahead and say deal to this one. Next up, another non-Jets mock trade here. This one comes from HS Tower, who says Los Angeles gets Jeremy Swayman and Boston gets Sean Durzi and a 3rd round draft pick. LA gets their future starter, while Boston gets a young Durzi who makes up for the loss of Orlov and others for the Bruins. If Boston is open to moving Jeremy Swayman, which I feel like they could be just because they have Linus Ullmark, and I mean, Jeremy Swayman has proven at this point that he is capable of being a starting caliber goaltender. I feel like he'd be a beautiful fit on a team like the Los Angeles Kings, but I'm just not sure if Durzi and a 3rd is enough for, a 24-year-old goaltender in Swayman who has a career .919 save percentage in 90 games. And I like Sean Durzi. I think he's a great puck mover, good on the power play, fantastic skater, really good offensive awareness, all that kind of stuff, but I just don't think him and a 3rd is enough for Jeremy Swayman. So for that reason, I'm going to say no deal, but again, I really like the fit of him on the Kings. So that is going to wrap up this Jets special of NHL Deal or No Deal. If you guys enjoyed this and you want to see more NHL Deal or No Deals throughout the offseason, then be sure to drop a like on this video. Let me know that you enjoyed. Also, feel free to leave your thoughts on all of the mock trades we covered in this video down below in the comments. And most importantly, if this is your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year long, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all soon.